Hello everyone, my name is Jack Murphy, and today I'll be explaining to you Camus' concept of the absurd. I have it written down on pieces of paper in front of me, which I'll be reading, and then breaking out of to ad-lib about what I've said, in case any of it rings to my ears as not clear, and so that I can break up what might otherwise be the more monotonous reading tone of someone simply reading to you from a piece of paper. Anyway, allow me to begin. Hello, I've already said that. I would like to explain to you Camus' concept of the absurd. This was, by and large, his main contribution to philosophy. It permeates his thought, with each of his works directly or indirectly relating to it. Camus has generally had a greater impact in continental thought than analytic, if you know what that means. But there has been increasing attention paid to Camus in the analytic tradition recently, which is how I came to encounter him. I was trained in analytic philosophy, but I really like some of the continental thinkers and their thought, and so I aim to give him an analytical treatment. And that's, you won't generally hear Camus explained the way that I'm about to explain him, for better or worse. But I think he's really interesting, so let's begin. The absurd refers to human existence in an uncaring universe. That's it in a sentence, done. But the absurd is a series of contradictions, all maintained by human expectation and cosmic reality. And it's easier to explain it at multiple different levels, because the more simply you state something, the less accurate it is. So I want you to be able to understand this quite accurately. And it's one of those continental oeuvres. I can't say that French word, but it's a whole movement, meaning feeling, set of beliefs rolled up into one. So I explained around it, and eventually you'll get it, because if I just try and explain it, I'll miss out some of the things around it. I hope that makes sense. So I've summed up three aspects of the absurd, what I call the teleological, the moral, and the epistemological. And those two big words that some of you might not understand, I'll explain those as well, because this is meant to be introductory philosophical stuff. But I've been in it for so long now that to some extent I can't see the wood for the trees, and I might over-explain some quite simple things, and I might just fly by some clearly deep philosophical terminology and ways of thinking about things which completely baffle you. If so, I apologize. I've really written this to be accessible, and hopefully it is, with the assumption that the people reading are inclined to think philosophically. If you're inclined to think, what's the point of that? Then just go off this video right now. Teleological comes from the Greek word telos, roughly meaning end. Humans are purpose-driven. We only perform actions for a certain end, which we're either consciously aware of or forms a part of our impulses. So we do things with purposes. We can look at another human and say, why have they done that? And we expect that we'd be able to give a response. It might be one we disagree with, might be one we agree with, but we expect that there are reasons for humans doing things. We seek food when hungry, so as I said, it doesn't all need to be conscious. We act only when we have reasons to act. Others can request our reasons, and we usually explain them. They're explicable. The absurd, wrong sheet. Meanwhile, the universe is not teleological, or at least the inorganic part is not. We cannot map on the human system of reasons to the universe. Stars generate heat and light not for some purpose of their own, but simply as an implication of the laws of physics. We can't say, why'd you do that, star? And have it say, well, I just felt like, I just wanted, it doesn't work. Instead, if you have the system of the physics of laws and you have objects, then you will have certain processes, actions, behaviors, but not in the same way that humans have them. Determinists might say here, no, you really do. You know, the humans just act like objects do. but we mistake ourselves into thinking that we have reasons behind them. Don't mean to scare the novices with that thought, but I just want to say to the determinists right now, you might be right, but at least for the way that humans understand the world, let's all agree for now that we can think about, that we understand humans in terms of purpose, and that we don't understand objects in terms of purpose. And that's all I need, really. Where physical processes interfere with human life, the human desire to explain hits up against the lack of purpose in, say, hurricanes, earthquakes, pandemics. Man, why did you break my phone? Why did you steal my things? Why did you do that? And I expect a reason. Earthquake, why did you destroy my home? I'm not going to get anything. Camus understands absurdity as a mismatch between expectations and reality. And when I explain the teleological, the moral, and the epistemological, always understand that. He's talking about what we can't help but want and what we seek, e.g. a purpose and explanation. I want that to be reasonable. I want to understand. And certain realities, moral, cosmic, fundamentally cosmic, epistemological, where we don't get what we want. We expect or instinctively want an explanation for natural disasters. We find none. You might have an objection right now which says, no, there's some people that explain them in certain ways. You might even believe the ways in which they explain them. Don't worry. You have thought of the correct response, and we are getting to it later. The teleological is a fine route into the absurd, but it's not the whole picture. So if we speak about whether objects have purpose or not, and if we understand that, there's the way of talking about purpose in human interaction and in the human realm, but then outside of the human realm, it doesn't really work. We're part of the way there, but we're not the whole way there. We understand human interaction in moral terms. We expect human interactions to avoid harm, to maintain equality and fairness between all agents, and we believe in accountability, that agents are held accountable for their wrongs and their good deeds. I tried here to write down moral beliefs that we all have, because obviously we can argue about anything in morality, you can argue about anything in philosophy, but the ones that I wrote, that we expect to avoid harm, to maintain equality and fairness, and we believe in accountability. I don't want you to do the philosopher thing here where you think of the counterexample and find that that thing doesn't hold in all situations. I'm not saying these things are objectively the case. I am saying it's uncontroversial that humans act upon them. So you're not in the philosophy chair right now. You're out walking in the world, and you see a man drive past and throw a tomato at one person, and then, smile, give a thumbs up to the other. You think, why did they throw a tomato at that person and then smile at that other person? You don't suddenly doubt the whole nature of morality. You just acts in your head an immediate moral, a moral belief kicks in, e.g. that humans ought to be treated fairly in a standard situation, all things being equal, ceteris paribus, whichever way you want to put it. And beliefs like that, the equality and fairness between people, and accountability, that you can't just have someone set their neighbor's car on fire and have nothing be done about it. Like, hopefully when you think about that, you also feel as I feel, no, that's wrong. Like, we have it instinctively as a part of us. And because we instinctively have it as a part of us, that's what Camus points to as one part of the absurd, the human side of it. Not just the teleological, but the moral part of it as well. Once again, the universe does not play by these rules. Solely good does not happen to morally good people. So we do good by others that have done good. We reward good people. We praise good people. We punish bad people. We or more in the modern age, we take away benefits and rewards from good people, from from bad people, but the universe doesn't act in this way. The universe does not reward or punish people according to our understanding of their moral status, whether they've been good, whether they've been bad. Bad does not befall the immoral reliably, and instead chance is blind. Note, Camus does not say that the order is reversed. He doesn't say the nature of reality is that the bad have good things happen to them and the good have bad things happen to them. He's just saying there's no order. There's no order whatsoever. No order, that is, in the moral goings-ons in the universe, because obviously there is an order, a physical order, but the physical order creates no moral order. There's not. The universe isn't thinking today, Sarah Smith has been horrible yesterday, and so today she's going to get insert unlucky thing here. So humans uphold a moral system which has no jurisdiction over the events in nature. This too is a large part of the absurd. Camus rhetorically extends the whole moral system over the universe and says we've all been handed a death sentence because we're all going to die one day. And when he puts it in that way, it nicely sums up this absurdity. Like, imagine a state in which all children who are born are condemned to die, and a random numbers generator sets up the age at which they're going to die. We'd say, that's disgusting, that's awful, they haven't done anything. Take away the state or expand the state so that it encompasses the whole of existence, and suddenly you have a death sentence put on everyone. And you have what in human society is generally one of the worst punishments you can dole out to people for no reason. And then hopefully once again you feel the absurd. Side note, the absurd, even if you couldn't write it down as a load of propositions, even if you could write it down as a load of propositions, you'd be missing something, because the absurd for Camus is partly that feeling. Literally the feeling of the absurd, and that for him has philosophical value. He thinks that feeling alone, even though you can explain it in terms of teleology, even though you can explain it in terms of moral philosophy, is something which requires responding to regardless. It's just easier to explain it in terms of philosophy than to just give you a feeling and say, how do we respond to that feeling? That's not typically how we do philosophy. So let me go on to the absurd in epistemology. I hope this is all making sense so far. This is the part where if we were talking face to face, I'd say, do you have any questions? But my laptop would just stare at me and there'd be dead camera time if I said that. So the absurd in epistemology. Epistemology is the study of the fundamentals of knowledge. How we know things, how we know that we know, what's knowledge, what's just belief, the conditions under which we can say we have knowledge, the conditions under which something is simply a belief. So epistemology comes into the absurd when one attempts to respond to the absurd. When one says, like, right, I've heard Jack explain the absurd now, and I've got something to say. I want to tell him why the absurd doesn't exist for me. Well, listen to this first. Camus spends a sizable proportion of the myth of Sisyphus telling us why others fail to respond to the absurd, as in they try to and they don't succeed. The essence of his argument is that reasonable doubt is enough to not have certainty in any non-absurd worldview. So that's big there. If you can have reasonable doubt in a system which would overturn the absurd, which would not make the world absurd anymore, which would dissolve the absurd, then you cannot have certainty in that worldview. And he thinks any worldview you have needs to have certainty. We'll go more into that in a second. So some worldviews may look like they solve the absurd, Natural disasters are divine punishment, or they might be caused by bad karma in an entirely interconnected world. Perhaps our moral instincts reflect moral facts, as real as rocks or principles of motion. The problem Camus sees with these systems of thought, which seek to make the world reasonable, to make our human understanding a part of the fabric of reality, is that we can doubt them. We know the absurd with certainty. We know there is nothing stopping us from dying tomorrow. We know, in short, because I really want to get you on board here, and you might think, well, if we're being that skeptical, how can we be certain of the absurd? Well, Camus just takes Camus just wants you to be authentic to yourself, true to yourself. Authentic probably doesn't work as well there. To be true to yourself and say, you know that you think that it would be wrong if I stole 50 quid from you and it wasn't given back. He knows that you think that, even if you think, oh no, the right and wrong don't actually exist. He knows that you'd have that instinct, give me my money back. He also knows that we all understand that we can't punish Mount Vesuvius for having it gone off and killed however many people in nearby Pompeii, however many hundreds of years ago. You can't punish a volcano. That's ridiculous. It's absurd. Ta-da. And as certainly as he knows those two things, that's as certain as he wants to be in your response. So I can't really doubt those two things, that I know I can't punish a volcano and that I have certain instincts about the world being rational. So I can have doubt. Let's take moral objectivity for a second here, that I can say, no, the fabric of our moral understanding is as embedded in the world as principles of physics. But then I can suddenly doubt that and say, well, I can't study moral facts like I can study physics. I can't do an experiment and see, oh yeah, look, I can. The moral fact went off. And now I know that there's a moral fact, in the same way that I know that there was a certain constant for, or not a constant, but a certain. Trying to explain the science now. In the same way that I know that there's there will be a value for how quickly an object of a certain mass will fall to Earth, given the force of gravity on Earth and the strength of it, given the mass of the planet. So once again, I can measure things in science. I can't measure things in moral philosophy, and so we might think that we can't establish in the same way moral facts as we can other facts. Now, the interesting thing about Camus' thought is that he's not saying that he believes in every single skeptical argument about every possible thing which would give the universe meaning and an order, and a human order which is satisfying to us. He's just saying, if the counter arguments make sense, if you can go, oh yeah, that is plausible, then you haven't got the worldview which would combat the absurd. The way I put it here hopefully makes it quite clear. Camus demands that the response be as certain as the facts creating the dilemma. The diversity of worldviews, both religious and secular, help his thesis. I jumped ahead there. Basically, that if there was a worldview which was as certain as the beliefs which set up the absurd, we would all think it. We would all think it right now, because it would be as uncontroversial as the idea that we shouldn't cause another human pain, generally, and especially for no reason. That there's a diversity of worldviews out there is a real problem. Camus sees it because and this is the fundamental of the absurd as spelt in epistemology. Here's our standard of certainty, and he feels like the standard of certainty allows us to set up the absurd, or it just generates the absurd itself. We don't set up voluntarily because we don't like it. It's a bad thing. That's the level of certainty. But any possible worldview in the world which would reconcile us to it isn't as high as it. So we're at this level, we're at the golden standard of epistemology when we set up the problem, and we'd have to give up some of our epistemological purity and sincerity if we were to just say, well, okay, this worldview is less certain than I am about the things which set up the problem, but I'm going to go for it anyway because it makes me able to sleep at night. Yeah, so that is the epistemological angle of the absurd, and it prevents us from responding to it. Now, I should wrap this up here so that it's nice and compact, but perhaps I'll quickly say something about Camus' own response to the absurd, because Camus isn't saying that you can't respond to the absurd. He's saying that you can't get rid of the absurd, right? He's saying that the absurd is a condition for all human beings, and that if we want to be intellectually honest, I suppose that's a big if here, but I'm talking to thinking people here, and thinking people here do want to be intellectually honest, not just like have a really nagging problematic doubt and then construct their whole worldview as if that doubt wasn't the case. No, Camus instead thinks that that our worldview should be constructed with the absurd right in the center. Like, this is a big thing, the fact that the universe does not care about us, but that we have an instinctive way of thinking as if it should, as if right and wrong should happen to good and bad, as if there should be something like a moral order, or at least an explicable, understandable order in the universe for humans. But there isn't, and he thinks we should live in light of that fact. So Camus has an early and a later stage, which isn't appreciated about him. In the early stage, vis-a-vis the myth of Sisyphus, he basically goes full nihilist. He's like, look, we've got life, we've got this death sentence over our head, we like order, but we haven't got it in the world. Let's just live as much life as we can. Let's enjoy and flourish in our sense of meaning, but let's never pretend that it expands to the whole world and that we definitely know that it is backed up by the universe, that it's an order which exists in the universe too. That might sound crazy. Camus can be quite unclear, but some of the more unclear parts are when he's talking about his response to the absurd. But I think the clearest way I can put it is that we undeniably think that other humans' lives are valuable and that our own human life is valuable, and so let's just live in accordance with it, and also in accordance with the unsettling nature of our existence in a universe which doesn't play by those rules. That's his early response. His later response is that in The Rebel is that his previous philosophy was consistent with Nazism, and that he needed instead a more robust political one, a more robust political response, and he tried to build out of the human desire for meaning and just some of the facts which he thinks uncontroversially play a part of human existence. He tries to build out of some of them a political philosophy which requires that I have to look after others, certainly not kill them, and work for their work for the improvement of their condition, if their condition isn't a good one. I'll leave that there because Camus does not expect that you'll respond as he'll respond, unlike other philosophers. He doesn't give you the response and say this is the right one. He simply tells you the parameters of a legitimate response. Don't pretend that the universe is rational. Don't pretend that you don't want a meaning, that you don't crave meaning, and then find a legitimate response which pays homage to both of those facts, which acknowledges them both. Which is why Camus is a great philosopher for me, because in the end he wants you to make up your own mind on these matters. And he even demonstrates to you that it'll be an impressive thing if you can, because he really struggles through his own response. So this has been Camus on the Absurd. I hope it's prompted a lot of thoughts in you. I hope it's clear. Thank you for watching something on the Lockdown School of Philosophy. It's an excellent initiative. And if I say it, I might end up doing it. I'm aiming to set up some introductory pages with loads of links to places for you to learn about philosophy generally, for you to learn your epistemology, your metaphysics, your I'm going to go now, because I've been speaking for so long. Goodbye. Camus on the Absurd. I've been Jack Murphy. See you.